the harvest you didn't plant is what it says.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Okay. And of course I started out with dandelion, and what this is, and I've got a handout for wild things to watch for while weeding, and for garden clubs.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Because for garden clubs, you know, it's nice to know what you can bring in and have for, you know, for your dinner before you've even planted a seed. And dandelions are probably the most nutritious thing in your garden, and we pull them out all the time. But there's more vitamin A than carrots. 14,000 international units of vitamin A, 11,000 in carrots, and that's in the leaves. All parts of it are useful. The flowers contain lecithin, which is, you know, in some of your bakery products and things, right? So the flowers, so you can use those petals and make wine and cookies and all kinds of pastries and things. And somebody the other day, I forget what they were making, like they put it in like meatballs or something. I don't know, anything that you want to put it in. And the stems have a sap like milkweed sap that will remove warts. And the leaves, of course, you know, are full of nutrition. And the roots make roasted or coffee. You can buy Dandy Blend, which is the only instant dandelion coffee. And you can make, I've been to dandelion ice cream socials, and the ice cream was like coffee ice cream because you put that, you know, right, I do too. And you put the dandelion instant coffee in it and refreeze it, and you've got coffee ice cream that's made of dandelions. And you can, you know, then you have the cookies and all the pastry. Everything in that social is made from the dandelions. And the Civil War soldiers marched on dandelion and chicory coffee. I think the next one is going to be chicory. Let me see. And there's the chicory, if you can find it. And the Civil War soldiers, when they ran out of coffee, they knew if you put the chicory in with the dandelion, it's a darker brew. Neither one had caffeine, but nobody knew about caffeine back then. But you can imagine if they had no food, but they had coffee to get started, that was better than just drinking hot water, you know? So that was really, really popular. And I have another story to tell about dandelions. We've only got the second slide, right? I lived in New Orleans, and they told me a story about how chicory got in the Louisiana coffee. And they told me that way back when this fellow was importing coffee from the islands and selling it to the king of Spain, or France, I'm sorry, because both countries own Louisiana. Anyway, he knew when it was in the port waiting for a ship to take it to France, he knew about the local people and Indians that were using the chicory. So he was not selling 100%, you know, coffee. He had it, you know, cut with some of the chicory. Well, a rival got wind of this and told the king of France, said, "You're being cheated, you know, you better do something about it." So he called the guy into the courtroom, and anyway, called him into the castle, and he said, "You know, I have it on good authority that you are cheating me." He said, "I ought to send you to the guillotine and off with your head. But," he said, "I'll only banish you from French colonies if you'll tell me one thing, anything, sire, you know, save my neck. How'd you make that great cup of coffee?" And it's been in French coffee ever since.
Wow.
And that's the story straight out of New Orleans.
That is awesome.
Okay, let's see if I get the right one. Okay, and this is lamb's quarters. Can you see that one? Yeah. Lamb's quarters comes up, if you're growing corn, it will turn up. Amazing. I mean, it's like magic. It loves to grow with corn. And that's where I usually find it, is where somebody has a cornfield. I will find this wherever I can and get the seeds and plant them because I love this. It's loaded with calcium. It has more calcium than almost anything in a plant that you can find. And I've always been deficient in calcium, so I've always liked this. It's kind of mealy, so it's not really good in a salad, but any recipe that you use spinach, you can substitute. They call this wild spinach sometimes. It's also called goosefoot because of the shape of it. And there is one you can buy seeds for that comes from South America, and it had the blush on it instead of white, which is album, that means white. it's fuchsia. So it's like green and fuchsia color. It's gorgeous, and it's a little bit larger leaves. Now, Chenopodium album is this one, and quinoa is a larger version. It's from South America, and that's probably where the Chenopodium, how it got its name. But know this one, it'll come up, when you're about that big, and just, let it get a place in your garden to grow. Because then if you grow it if you let it grow in your cornfield, I had to go get 5 plants and put them in my cornfield, because I was told that if it was growing in there, the corn wouldn't blow down, and mine always blew down about the time it was time to harvest. That's when the storms would come through. And the rows where I had those planted didn't fall. And the reason is these have really deep tap roots, and corn is a grass, so it helped to keep it solid in the ground. And then when you harvested, you had greens to go with your corn. That's a good thing. Now, I mentioned to my neighbor about it because there was none in the valley, and I had to get it, bring it in. Anyway, he said, well, most farmers that have like 40 acres or 100 acres and they're going out and harvest, they don't want to deal with something else that's in there. They put like pre-emergent or something out, so they had just corn. But he said, if you just got 10 rows of corn, like at, your home, then that's okay. You're going out there picking by hand, yeah. If you got a harvester, they don't want it in there. And so it kind of, there was at the feed store in Sevierville, and I went in the feed store, and there's this chart, noxious weeds for the farmer to eliminate, and I wanted to buy it so bad because half of them, actually 3/4 of them, were my vegetables. And I said that to the guy. I said, I eat all of those, and I want that poster. And he said, no, you can't have it. These farmers need to know what to get out of their cornfield. I went, he wouldn't sell it to me. Yeah. So, there's a book out that's Weed 'em and Eat 'em, and in dandelions, the fellow that puts on the Dandelion Festival, he says, if you can't beat 'em, eat 'em. That's his motto. Yeah. And purslane. You can even find that in some cookbooks, especially with Spanish recipes. They call it vertelago is in Spanish, and pusley in the mountains. It's a little succulent, tiny seeds, but it will reseed. And my neighbor, when I lived in a place that was really shaded, and I had to use part of his farm to grow my garden. But my garden, because I hate weeds, I had to wait till they came up. So his is all, neat rows, and mine's, got all this stuff in it. And he came out and he says, now tell me why yours looks like this and mine's like that. I said, well, right at your feet. I said, you see that purslane? Yeah, see that. I said, well, you went to the health food store, you'd be buying that in a bottle. I said, for gamma-linolenic acid, which this has in great quantities. I said, it's $18 a bottle. Oh, I said, there it is, free at your feet. So then he understood, okay, you're saving money by, having it, natural.
Right.
And what's our next one? Oh, chickweed. And chickens do love chickweed. Do you ever have it around your chickens?
I'm not sure.
If you have it
I've
somewhere
got
around
every other weed.
around the barn or somewhere, because you put that in there and they eat it right up. But chickweed is sometimes found if you weight loss formulas. Some of the first ingredients in there might be chickweed, because it's like olestra. It attaches to the fat molecule that passes out of your body. But I say don't press your luck and eat this in a salad and a donut at the same time. I mean, be reasonable.
Yeah, that's right. You can't eat chocolate.
Right, yeah. Okay, yarrow, mellifolium, and there was some yarrow that was sold here, and that's a good one to keep around. It'll grow in ditches. It doesn't really have to have really special soil or anything. It'll grow in a lot of places that does need the sun. But one of the important things about yarrow is that it has hemostatic properties, and it clots blood. And even the soldiers in the times of Troy, even. I mean, that far back that soldiers in those countries over there carried pouches of yarrow, whether it was dried or fresh, it didn't matter. They carried pouches into battle, and they could staunch wounds. You know, they'd have a strip of cloth or leather, you know, and they could bind their wound, and it would stop bleeding. So it's always a good thing to have things that are medicinal like that in your garden, as well as your vegetables. And okay, our wild mustard. One of the wild mustards we know in the spring is creasy greens, which is mustard cress, but it got called creasy greens in the springtime, and you'll find them in some of the local markets. We have them up in where I live in North Carolina, and March you'll find that. And these would have been really good for folk. They had dried food all, you know, reconstituted stuff all winter. So the first things that come up that were edible, oh wow, you know, fresh greens. And this would be one of the first things that would come up, would be these wild mustards in that cress family. And of course they're good for health, we know that. But you can, when it goes to seed, you can, and people did this, they could take those seeds in quantities and grind them up, and you make your own mustard. So they had this for seasonings as well. It has that, you know, that same flavor to it if you had enough seeds. And yellow dock. This is another one you would consider noxious and try to get it out of your yard. But I had a lot of it at my place, and before the fella would come to mow, I would go out and gather this when it was young and parboil it and put it in the freezer and have it for greens later on, you know, before it got mowed in. On these, and the roots are yellow, so that's why it's called yellow dock, loaded with iron, and that's what makes the roots yellow. And I have a box, I didn't bring it, but I have a box that comes from, I guess, maybe around the 1900s, because, you know, doctors bought from these mail order places to have their medicines, and it was generally powders and liquid things that they would mix up. And yellow dock powder, I have it in a box, and it would have been given to people with anemia. You'd mix it in with their food, you know, to help, you know, counteract that. And so there's a source of iron, you know, out there if you need it and you're living off the land. And on this one, you do take, there's a red, the central rib is red, and that you take off. And it's the opposite with rhubarb, where you don't eat the green, you eat the red part. Well, this one, you don't eat the red, you eat the green. So you take that off, you know, and just take the green part and boil
So
it.
you eat the leaves?
The leaves, yeah, when they're young.
Are these the ones that have those roots to China?
They get really big, and they have the brown seeds, and
Oh,
you
I
know,
hate those.
use them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was
Eat them right. Like I said, you can't beat them,
I
eat
was
them.
taking the drill and drilling them out of the ground.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
There you go.
Right. Well, there you know.
Well, now
Yeah.
I
Do you
know.
just cook them like
They're
greens,
useful.
like spinach or
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Huh.
And if you, but then again, if you don't want it the next year, you gotta do like she does.
Yeah.
And dig up that dark, you know, that long root.
I have a bee yard, so I don't.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I always have one little section where I can let them grow. And what's our next one? I can't even see it.
Oh, plantain.
Oh, plantain. Oh, that's a full medicine chest right there. It is edible, but like mushroom books say, it's edible but not choice. So I don't think of it as an edible. I think of it as medicinal, because when you can crush that, chew it up, however you can get it soft, and get it into a poultice, and I've used it on my sprained ankle and my daughter's sprained ankle. It reduces pain and inflammation. If you get an insect bite, a sting, it'll relieve that as well. And it said that if you put it on as soon as you've been hit, it will prevent bruising, that it won't turn black and blue if you do it right away. I went to Florence, Alabama to do a program for the Forest Service there, and there was a fellow waiting for me, and he said, I want to catch you first, he said, because I want to see if you know what herb makes me a one-herb man. Is it plantain? Dang.
Oh, you guessed it right away.
Because I knew there were so many uses, but there were some that I didn't hear about, that he had 4 pages written out of how he used that one plant.
Wow.
And the one that I thought was most unusual that I'd never heard about, he was supposed to have his teeth pulled to get false teeth. He made mouthwash out of plantain.
Really?
I don't know how long he used it, but it must have cured the gingivitis because he'd never had to have his teeth pulled.
Wow.
He saved his teeth.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's not in any book. That's just how he figured out and used it for so many things. So there you go. And so I always give this a place in my yard. I like, and it's broadleaf plantain. And some of you might be using psyllium, as a bulk laxative. This is a first cousin to it. This is Plantago major and Plantago psyllium. Its first cousin, if you will, is where the psyllium comes from for Metamucil and all of those products. So if you are living off the land and you need, survival or whatever, and you need a laxative, then you can use the seeds off of the Plantago major. Same way. Sheep sorrel. And sheep sorrel is one of those that tells you tells you about your soil, because if this turns up in a flower pot or your flower bed, it's going too acid because it's like really acid soil. So okay, I can tell when this is here, it's getting too acidic. But you use this, called sheep sorrel. If you turn it around, it's got little ears like a sheep's face, a little long part, the little ears. And it has some oxalic acid, but it's not too much. If you have oxalate stones, you wouldn't eat enough of it to really be harmful. But it has a good sharp lemony taste. And I've had it in a green drink where we had dandelion greens and this blended with orange juice. And I've also had it in scrambled eggs, which is really good with it. So, and it's great in the salad, of course. It would be great in that. So I really like sheep sorrel as far as the taste is just really, really good. So again, that one. And there's one next to it. I think this is going to be your oxalis, the little yellow flower that looks like clover. Yeah. Same thing. This has the oxalic acid in it too, so it has that sharp lemony taste. We always, as kids, used to pop the seed pods. Yeah. And this one, the Cherokee used it for fish when they were cooking trout, and they would stuff this for the lemony flavor in it, and they would stuff the fish with this and powdered sumac berries, which is also kind of a lemony taste. And so the two of those things, they would put those in the fish and wrap it in hickory leaves and bake it on a hot rock or something. So again, it's another flavor you can use. And sometimes I'll do if I can find them around March 17th, I'll do potato soup and put those on the top of it. Looks like shamrock soup.
Oh, yeah.
It's always fun to do. And our strawberry. Have any of you found that you have wild strawberries?
Oh, yes.
Occasionally?
Yeah.
But not the ones, these have the white flower. There's some with a yellow flower, and those are fall strawberries. And they spread. We have a lot of those around, but they're tasteless berries. These are also small, the native ones are, and I know places where they grow in fields up in North Carolina, but they're very, very sweet. The real native strawberries are tiny. They're about the size of your fingernail, but very, very sweet. And one of the places I go take folks in June is where some of these strawberry fields are, and everybody gets a chance to try them. This is with, if you want to look it up, it's Smoky Mountain Field School. It's sponsored by the University of Tennessee, and there are botanists and biologists and people that are out every month. Several programs in every month all year long, and it could be winter, it could be summer, doesn't matter. And I've done 4 a year for like 28 years, and we're outdoors and we collect things and we cook them, and we have a chance to try them. And when we go out to the strawberry fields, I'm telling the Cherokee story of the origin of strawberries, and that is first man and first woman had the first argument, and first wife went running off crying because he really upset her, and he said, oh, I didn't really need her around anyway, it's okay. He went on flint napping or whatever he was doing. But long about mid-afternoon he got kind of hungry, and he looked over and he said, there's no smoke from the chimney. Oh, I forgot, she ran off this morning, didn't come back after that argument. I'd even forgotten what we argued about. So he went off looking for her, and she was on that first ridge of mountains over there way off. He could just barely see her. Creator, please stop my wife. I need to get her home before dark. Something could happen to her. Besides, I'm hungry. So he gets to that ridge and she's not there. And the Creator has tried to stop her, but he had huckleberries and blueberries, and if you know about them, they're kind of underneath the leaves. You have to kind of part the bushes to see the berries, and they're dark colored anyway, and she never seen them. She didn't know what they were, and she went right on through. So she could tell she'd been there, but she didn't stop. She's on that next ridge. Oh, Creator, please slow my wife down so I can catch up to her and take her home. Well, he thinks, okay, well, something with thorns, you know, so he had blackberries grow in her path, and that way he'd hold her fast, he thought. Well, instead it ripped her dress, and then it's really a bad day. You know, first the argument, now her dress is ripped, and she kept on going because she didn't, you know, they're black, she didn't notice them, didn't know they were sweet. So he gets to that ridge, and she's not there either. He sees that piece of cloth, he knows she's been there. Creator, I'm getting quite tired myself. I really want to get my wife home. So please stop my wife. Okay. Better get her down on her knees, and maybe if it's a bright color, she might notice it. And maybe sweetness would help too. So he had this big patch of wild strawberries grow. Sure enough, she's running through there, and she smells it. She looks down, she sees those pretty berries. The next thing you know, she's on her hands and knees. She's filling her apron with strawberries. Husband catches up to her, and she says, "Oh, honey, aren't these sweet? Oh, these taste so good." He said, "You're right. We'll take them home right now and we'll have them for supper." And so they did. And you know, to this day, the only jam you ever see on the table in a Cherokee home is strawberry. And that's the truth. And we told Grandma about it, and she said, "You know, that's all they ever bring me is strawberry." Because it was sitting on her table. And violets. Now we know about candied violets, and even if you candy them, of course they're pretty, you could put them on a cake or something, but the best ones are the Viola odorata, which actually come from Europe. Our violets don't have any scent. No scent, you don't have a flavor. So you have the color, but you don't have the flavor. However, violet blossoms, wherever they come from, contain rutin, and rutin strengthens capillaries for varicose veins, gingivitis, that kind of thing, or any kind of bleeding that you have. It would help internally. Rutin helps strengthen those capillaries. And it's better absorbed in the presence of vitamin C, and the leaves are loaded with vitamin C. They might be orange if they didn't have all that chlorophyll making them green. So there's both right there. And I have eaten a lot of violet greens. When I lived in Louisiana, they were as big as the palm of my hand. And I had gotten Yule Gibbons' book, Stalking the Wild Asparagus. That was the first one ever written about wild foods. And we had elderberries at the back door, and we had all these violet greens out front. So the only variable in the budget when your husband's in school, you know, he was in university there. And so food was the only thing that I could vary, you know, what we spent. So I started doing a lot of wild foods at that time. It was free. Well, my daughter was 5 and in first grade at that time. She was on one of these walks with me one time, and she said, "Mom, I remember being teased as a kid because I liked spinach and nobody else did." She said, "We weren't eating spinach, were we?" I said, "No, it was always violet greens." And that shows you how good they were.
Wow.
And I really do like them actually better than spinach. They're really very tasty, so they're really good green. Okay, and our mint, spearmint, and those are introduced. They're not native. Our natives are like mountain mint and bee balm. And if you think about it, when you crush that, it doesn't smell like the mint that we're used to being mint. It has a strange aroma to it. Well, what that aroma is what makes it an antiseptic, and it was one of the teas that you'd give for colds and flu that kids didn't mind taking because it tasted good, but it didn't taste like spearmint. And if you look at a Listerine bottle, it's the top ingredient that makes it an antiseptic is thymol, Thymol. That's what our native mints have, is thymol. So you can't substitute our mints, native mints, for the mints we think of that are spearmints because it tastes like Listerine in your cup. Trust me, I did that one time. Somebody asked me, how did Listerine get in the punch? And I went, oh, I picked the wrong mint. It was just coming up, and I thought it was my spearmint. It wasn't. It was the mountain mint, not mountain mint. It was the bee balm that was coming up, and I mistook it for spearmint, and I didn't even check it first. I made mint ginger punch, and then they had to say, and I said, oh, I know what it is. I got the wrong mint. So, but it is really good as far as a medicine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So. And your jewelweed, Impatiens capensis, and that's for poison ivy, sunburn, and rashes. I think I saw some at your place. Jewelweed has yellow or orange flowers, depending on the elevation sometimes, and that juiciness that's in the sap will remove the urushiol that makes the rash. So as soon as you're in it, then you can use that to immediately to take it off. You can also put it in the blender and pour it in ice cube trays and make ice cubes. And then you take that on a picnic in your cooler, and somebody gets into poison ivy, you can immediately have that cold ice cube with this juice in it to put and take that off. So that works really well.
And it's the leaves that has that.
The
sap,
stems
or
in the spring, the stems are juicy. Later on in the year, when it begins to get a little woody, you just use the leaves. Depends on the season. Yeah. When I do my classes, we actually make a potion, and we put. In fact, that's in Mountain Kitchen in this one, where we make the combination. That's a peel-seeded cucumber, jewelweed, aloe vera gel, and witch hazel. All of those are good for the skin, and we blend that up and strain it and put that in the refrigerator, and it lasts all year, for anything. You can use it just as a facial toner, whether you've got a rash or not. It feels good, yeah. And the reason it's called jewelweed is that two reasons. One is if you take the leaf and put it in sunlight and water, it looks like it's made of silver or aluminum foil, and the seeds are good trail nibble. Touch me not is a mountain term for it, because when you brush the seeds, they explode. And if you can catch them in your hand, and if you can scrape that, well, they taste good. They taste like walnuts. But if you take that green coating off, there's a turquoise seed inside. That's a hidden jewel.
That's cool. They're not endangered, are they?
No, not a bit of it. Poke. Okay, and you pick it before flying. Has anybody ever eaten poke? Okay, what'd you think about it?
I was a little girl. I don't really remember it, but my grandmother used to fix it.
Yeah. It's very common. Sassafras, I guess, and poke are the two things that people around the country remember growing up that Grandma would fix. It's my least favorite wild thing. I eat a lot of wild foods, but I do not like poke.
Really?
I do not. You have to cook it 3 times. Yeah, pour the water off and cook it. So you got to do that 3 times, or it's got some toxicity. And I have pickled the stalks. I also had to boil them 3 times, and then I pickled them just to see what it was like. They were okay. My mother liked poke. Now, she grew up with it, and she told the story that when she was a little girl, they moved to a new farm, and they hadn't planted crops yet. So my grandmother told her to go down to the fence row and get some poke for supper. So while she's picking it, there's a little boy about 5 years of age, and he's hanging on the fence saying, sour poke, sour poke. She said, well, I don't know how your mother fixes it, but it's not sour, the way my mother does, and she kept on picking. The next day, the little boy's mother came and said, well, we're really glad somebody moved into the farm so we'd have neighbors. But, she said, when we moved in, we brought seeds of things that didn't grow here to get them started, and she said, that's our poke down by the fence row, and we don't mind sharing, just don't take it all. He was trying to say, that's our poke.
Oh.
How cute.
So whenever she did, which was occasionally, she would cook poke, she would say, we're having sour poke for dinner.
Oh, that's
From
hilarious.
then on, it was sour poke.
Is that the one that has those purple little,
Yeah.
that are neurotoxic? Yeah. Okay.
Right. And it has to be before it ever flowers, no bigger than knee high.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. Or then it's really toxic. Now, one of our neighbors, we lived at the snowbird reservation outside Robbinsville, North Carolina, and one of the Cherokee neighbors found that Jerry had arthritis, and so he brought him pokeberry wine, and he was supposed to take it, you know, like some every day till it was gone, you know, to cure his arthritis. Well, my husband said, you know, in the interest of science, I think I know what it tastes like. And he took a sip of it. He said, that's the most gosh awful stuff he ever put in his mouth. We poured it out. He said, I'll keep the arthritis. I'm not drinking this stuff. He said, I don't know why anybody would go to the trouble to make wine out of it because it tasted so bad. I'll take his word for it. I didn't try it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We get to the rules of foraging. And let's see if I get them to come in. Okay. Identification, location, and multiplication. So you want to make sure that where you're getting it, it's okay. You know, if you're in a national park or somewhere, they may have a list that's legal, or a neighbor or somewhere. Also, you want to make sure that it hasn't been sprayed with, you know, pesticides or something, or herbicides. So make sure that it's, you know, a clean area. Identification, be absolutely sure what you're about to ingest or put on your skin. My old teacher told me, she said, when you go out with somebody or book, she just learn 3 things really well. Don't have to remember all of them. Just learn 3 really well, and each time you go out, 3 more. And in 20 years, you'll be teaching it. And I was teaching in 10. So, because I'd complained that I wouldn't remember everything that she was talking about. She's just remember 3. So identification, location, multiplication. You don't take the first plant you see. It might have just started in that area, and if you pick it, there's no seeds, there's none next year for you or anybody else. There may be a butterfly that absolutely needs it, or if you're on the Appalachian Trail, you know, and you're just curious about it, but maybe somebody behind you needs it, like plantain or something, you know, for medicine, then leave it for somebody. So then the 4th plant you can collect. You know, then there's plenty for next year and for anybody else that needs it. And I think this one's going to be the, okay, this is the true spearmint. All right. This is a family story. Everybody has a story that comes down through the generations. Well, mine's a plant story. Isn't that amazing? It would be a plant story. And so, my great-great-grandfather, who was in the Battle of San Jacinto for Texas, you know, independence later, when he was a young man in Tennessee, and I moved actually back to Tennessee from Texas, in almost the same county they left from as it happened. Anyway, for young men to meet the girls, and everybody was busy farming, you know, but there was a time before harvest, even though it was hot weather, but they would get together and they'd have a dance, and that way boys and girls could meet each other. They would, you know, pick a mate. So somebody offered their home. They took the furniture out, and somebody had a fiddle, and they came, and people would come and spend a couple of days. You know, it was a big deal to go, you know, to this neighboring farm. So they would dance in the evening when it was cooler, and they'd rest in the afternoon. Well, the girls knew that they were going to perspire, and the soap was hog lard and ashes, so you didn't still smell that good when you cleaned up. So any kind of perfume that was around would be the mint bed by the well. Everybody had mint. So they would go out in their underwear. Everybody, you know, couldn't see them because they were sleeping. The girls would slip out and they would roll in the mint bed before the dance. And hopefully that would cover up any odor of perspiration. Well, so Jesse got to dance with Miss Emily finally. And they're waltzing around to the, you know, to the music. And he gets brazen enough to get real close. And by this time his nose is up to her ear. And smelling, and she says, "Oh, you noticed I rolled in the mint bed before the dance." "Yes, Miss Emily, I did notice that, but, well, I fear I need to tell you that I think the chickens roll there first." Oh gosh.
My luck.
My great-great-grandmother was named Liza Ann, not Emily.
Oh my gosh.
She didn't get her fella.
Wow.
So homemade perfume, you know, watch where you get it from.
Free roll.
Yeah, right.
That's a good one.
So this is a gourmet feast from Gourmet Grazing. And this was at Fontana. We did a weekend there, and we color on trout, and we stuffed it with wood sorrel, and we had the sumac powder in it, and we had a quiche, I think, had lamb's quarters, I think, and we had the spice bush berries in cake, I think it was, and we had sassafras tea. So we had, you can see, you can have quite a feast out of just, substituting wild things or totally wild things, whether it's greens or whatever. So anyway, and this is a video that shows cooking and also making some medicinals, and it's an actual video. It was filmed by the National Park and sold there for a number of years, and it was actually filmed at the John C. Campbell Folk School. So that's in there also, and Grandma Mandy that I talk about, she's in there talking about things. This is my card, which is it's real seeds, forget-me-not. It's got my information on it, and I have a handout for everybody. This is wild things to watch for while we wonderful. There's also some recipes.
We like the Campbell Art School. We've been up there before. It's awesome.
Yeah, really.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And,
How much are the videos?
And the video, excuse me, I just stepped on your toe. These are $10.95 or $11, which is easier. And I didn't have enough for them, so I did make some copies in here. These are 7, these are 11. So, but anyway, so you have, if you want to take something home, it shows you more things to do. Can you pass some back? Another one.
I think that's
More?
good.
You got good? Got one? Okay. You got yours? Okay. All right. We'll take one. We'll take one to somebody. Okay. Okay. Well, I have any questions?
Very informative. I love it.
She came all the way from North Carolina for us.
That is awesome.
Wow.
Thank you.
Just because I knew this lady ahead of time, and somebody out of the blue, I don't ever want to drive that far, but Diane, okay, I'd love to see you again. Okay.
She's spending the night.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I go to the Native Plant Conference at Western Carolina University every year. Sometimes I do programs too. And there's not as many vendors there for native plants as what you've got here today. It's just amazing.
Yeah, there's a
This was
lot.
It was
Yeah,
really
it's
great.
amazing.
Really hard, but it's been worth it.
Yeah,
It's been fabulous.
It was
Great
amazing.
selection.
Yeah. So there's a lot of flavors out of the forest you can't buy in the grocery store, and a lot of it's just right, it's in your yard already, Hey, it's free food.
Well, who couldn't
Healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want that today with these prices?
I know.
Right,
I'd
yeah.
have to survive on it.
Yeah. Back in Y2K, when 2000 was coming along, I had full classes all year, no matter where I went. Everybody wanted to know, how do we survive? What's around us, I couldn't get medicines out of China, and then of course with COVID, we couldn't get things out of China and India and these places that we get herbs and so what's native around us that we can use. So it's it's helpful to know. It really is. And kids love this stuff. They really do. And a lot of camps are doing this now. I know friends that teach at kids camps, and one of the things that they'll include in that is foraging and
They
kids
should do
love it.
this in school. This should be a basic thing for school, just
Yeah,
to
it would
learn.
be.
I
You
mean, when
only
we
see it in
do
camps.
Yeah, because I remember in
So you
middle
cover
school we would
anything
learn
like
things.
muscadines or scopadines or nothing like that?
Oh, my freezer is full of scuppernings right now. Yeah. I have a fella who comes down from Ohio once a year, and he always says, "You gonna make my scuppernong pie?" Yes. Yeah, but I learned it in Georgia actually to make scuppernong out of grapes. You just take the seeds out, and you just.
The wind got it.
Didn't break, did it?
No.
That's what we were afraid of. If you had a wind,
Yes.
problem.
Got it.
You're holding your.
We need to take it down from the top.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take it down. There we go. There we go.
It's all right. You could just put it on the ground. You had to hide have to find that old thing.
I bet.
They don't have that
I was gonna
anymore.
say you probably can't buy them,
Down
can
in
you?
the school, they have it in the wall.
Something historic.
There you go.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. With
So you
machinery.
mentioned the University of Tennessee, was it that you were doing something with
Yeah,
them for
right.
years?
They
What is that
sponsor the Smoky Mountain Field School, and they've been doing that for over 30 years. Because I've been 28 with them, and I think they started like 35 years ago. And it's all year long, and they do programs in the national park. I do 2 in Tennessee side and 2 on the North Carolina side.
So can anyone sign up?
Oh,
to
yeah.
be- okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm
You just
really,
go to their
really
website
interested.
Sign up, and I get people from all over that come. And we spend the whole day, and we cook something. We always have something. There's August is mushrooms, and October is Cherokee foods, and we explore the Cherokee things. So yeah, so that's on this side.
That's why you need to retire.
Be nice.
Yeah. I started with Marie Mellinger out of Foxfire down here in Georgia, because all year long, well, from April to October, we would come for a weekend, and it'd be at a park where they would let us forage, or it'd be somebody's farm, and everything we ate for the weekend had to have a wild edible in it. And that's how come the cookbook that Marie put together got started, with all the recipes that we tried. So
How neat.
yeah, so we've been eating a lot of these wild things. But yeah, she's one of the first writers in Foxfire books.
That is really
You make what, dandelion jelly?
Yes, yeah. At my last class, I served little thumbprint cookies with dandelion jelly in it. Yeah,
And that was from the leaves of the
from
flowers?
the petals.
From the
From
petals,
the petals
yeah.
of the
Some of the
flowers.
flowers are edible. I've never eaten one,
Yeah.
but I know they're edible.
And you can, because kids do this at camp. They'll take the clover blossoms and the dandelion blossoms and put them in sweet batter and fry them and make little fritters out of the flowers.
Oh,
Kids love to do that. Yeah.
wow, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
There's
But
just so much you can do and you just don't know.
Don't even realize it.
and the
And
nutrition.
I find it so fascinating that, well, I live up in LJ now, but we were in a subdivision in Woodstock, and they'd panic if they saw a dandelion in your yard.
yeah.
The HOAs do.
I was gonna say.
And now we're at our farm, and there's dandelions, and I'm like, welcome, because I
Right.
know they're bringing up nitrogen, and
Exactly.
they're feeding the bees. There's all
Yeah.
kind of things going on that are positive.
I went to the Dandelion Festival, and I won for Dandiolis, and it's in his cookbook for dandelions. And up there, the Amish really celebrate all these things I talk about. They use them, but the hillsides are covered. I mean, the dandelions are like chrysanthemums.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
huge.
They're tall, right? Yeah, I saw some.
I mean, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I saw some in South Georgia like that. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, it
Yeah.
looks kind of like a dandelion, but a different variety. And it was really they were
Well, and the
tall, yeah.
hybrid ones, he brought hybrid out of the Dayton Farmers Market, and the leaves were that long and that wide. They were the hybrid. Well, you think about people from Europe that have eaten these for, generations. They come here and they're on an ortho commercial.
Yes,
know?
exactly. They're like, wait, they're killing myself.
What? What do you mean? Exactly.
That is funny.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
The Whole Foods Market does sell the hybrid. You can get the hybrid dandelions there, and they are bigger. So there's a lot more to work with.
I find it very fascinating that medicinals, all the things that we have that we need, and even things that pharmaceuticals have hijacked, all came from our environment. But what they have done is stripped it from
They'll
really
take,
all
right.
the good
It's
things.
like he said about rooting, where they just have the root and they don't have the seed with it, because you can get that yourself, but they want to be able to patent one
Yes.
thing, so they take that out, right?
Yes.
But it turns out that 75% of plants studied for the folklore turned out to be right, and the other 25% they didn't throw away because they found something in it they didn't know about till they studied it. So
That's-
there you
that's
go.
the thing,
So
when you-
100% were useful.
And when you hear them say, well, it's not been proven because they haven't studied it, that's the flip side of that statement. They don't
They
want you
can't
to
patent it.
think
They're
it's
not gonna
good,
study it,
yeah,
right?
because they
Yeah.
don't want to study it.
They want to make money off of it.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
Any way they can make money. That's
Yeah.
what kind of messes
Okay.
things up in the world now.
Okay, you want
Yeah,
to